Radio Nordsee International.
This is the Roger Day Show.
This is the happiest place.
Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee.
You're having fun on R.N.I's.
Fun loving R.N.I, the music machine. Radio Nordsee International.
The Radio Nordsee International story is a dramatic and exciting account of the world's most eventful offshore radio station. The station whose dramas made news headlines all over the world. The station which was chased around the North Sea by governments, bombed, jammed and attacked, and finally to be silenced by the Dutch government. The R.N.I story starts in 1968, when Erwin Meister and Edwin Bollier were installing radio equipment on the MV Galaxy, the former home of the English offshore station of the 1960s, Radio London. The station was to transmit easy listening and pop music off the coast of Germany. However, in January 1969, the project fell through, owing to the introduction of the Marine Offences Act by the German government. Disappointed by the decision, both Meister and Bollier decided they'd start their own station. A 347-ton ship was purchased and named the Mebo, from the first two letters of their surnames. After completion, it was decided that a much larger radio ship would be more suitable, so they bought the 630-ton MV Silvretta. The 186-foot ship was renamed the Mebo II. This ship was lavishly fitted out to become the most modern of all offshore radio stations. 2 studios were built on board, and the transmitter room was fitted with 4 transmitters, which were a 105 kilowatt RCA medium wave model, 2 shortwave 10.5 kilowatt transmitters, and a 1.2 kilowatt FM transmitter. On the 22nd of January 1970, the brightly painted Mebo II left Slikkerveer in Holland for her anchorage off Noordwijk. The next day at 10:30 p.m, a test transmission was broadcast on 6210 kHz in the 49-meter shortwave band and on 102 MHz FM.
Meine Damen und Herren, Sie hören weiterhin das Testprogramm von Radio Nordsee International, ausgestrahlt vom Motorschiff MS Mebo II. Und wir benötigen Ihre Mithilfe. Schicken Sie uns doch bitte Empfangsberichte und schreiben Sie auf diese Berichte, wann Sie uns gehört haben, wo Sie uns gehört haben und wie alt Sie sind. Und das alles bitte an folgende Adresse: an Radio Nordsee International 8047 Zürich, Postfach 113 in der Schweiz. Ich wiederhole, unsere Adresse lautet Radio Nordsee International 8047 Zürich, Postfach 113 in der Schweiz.
Roger Day takes up the story.
I had a lot of people phoning me up saying, "Here, there's a new pirate station," as I always did, exactly in that voice. "Are you going to join it?" And as I'd heard about 800 other rumours of radio stations joining, I said, "Oh yeah, believe it when it happens." So I saw this advert in disc that said, "Experienced disc jockeys." So even though it said that, I still applied, and I got this weird letter back from Zurich, and I thought I had nothing to lose by going and seeing them, because they said, "Come across and see us in Scheveningen, where they were staying at the Grand Hotel, and I met these two characters, 1970s answer to Punch and Judy, called Meister and Bollier. In fact, I think Laurel and Hardy were funny, a couple of characters. They made me laugh more anyway. And they said, "Oh yeah, we got a radio station." And I thought, oh sure, you know, like you've paid me for coming over and everything, but I still won't believe it until I see it. And at that time it wasn't even testing. But they said, "Well, come and see our boat, can you stay on?" I said, "Well, look, I've got to get back to England for a few things, because I was earning my living out of discotheques then, and I was in no way going to turn down valuable contracts to stay over there." So I said, "Well, I've got to do it today." And they took me to the harbour, and we went out, and on the horizon appeared this gaudily painted thing, which must have killed off all the fish in the area. It was painted, I'd never seen anything like it. It was really what they termed psychedelic painting, and it had a big aerial, so I presumed there was a transmitter on board. Went on, and the studios were just about complete, with some strange equipment in there. And I had a look, and they said, "Well, do you want the job?" And I said, "Sure." Well, they said, "Well, can you stay?" I said, "Look, I've got a wife and everything. I can't just stay. We don't do things like that. I've got to go home and tidy up loose ends." So I went home and thought, oh, well, nothing to lose. I was a bit fed up with doing discotheques. And a couple of weeks later, I joined R.N.I, but not before I recorded a test announcement for them saying, if I can remember it correctly, this is Radio Nordsee International, the sound of a... Hang on, what was it?
This is the sound of Europe, Radio Nordsee International on test transmissions. We would appreciate listener reception reports, so if you're hearing us, and you must be to be hearing me say this, please write to us at R.N.I, P.O. Box 113, 8047, Zurich in Switzerland. I'll repeat that again for you. It's R.N.I for Radio Nordsee International, P.O. Box 113, 8047, Zurich, Switzerland. We'd appreciate it if you wrote in, and please keep on listening.
And I did put that on cassette and left it with them, and was quite amused a couple of days later to hear this very loud hiss on my radio, and then my announcement coming over, because as you can imagine, my phone started going kind of wild with people saying, "Yeah, we've heard you joined Radio Nordsee." I said, "No, it can't be me, I'm here." And it might sound like me, but I wouldn't join one of those pirates. You get arrested for that, you know.
The chairman of the board of the Happiness Corporation. Charge!
Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee.
The next month, the 105 kilowatt medium wave transmitter was tested on 186 meters. And a week later, live tests started when the DJs arrived. Alan West, Carl Mitchell, and me, Andy Archer.
They said, "Who do you know that we can employ?" And I mentioned umpteen people who they didn't really contact. Why, I don't know, but anyway, some of whom I mentioned, of course, were people like Andy Archer, that is, Alan West, Carl Mitchell. But anyway, Andy, Carl and Alan I knew were in the same position as myself, ex-radio people looking for radio work, not really getting on too well with the BBC if they wanted to get on with them at all. And I phoned them up and said, "Look, come out and see what we can do." And of course they just about came out in the next tender.
Alan West takes up the story.
In the early days it was very good, much better actually than it was in the latter days. Every facility was there. There was more food, wine, spirits and beer and cigarettes and cigars than one could cope with, and the money was very good.
At 6 p.m. on the 28th of February, the station officially opened with German and English programming.
And don't forget you are tuned to Radio Nordsee International, the sound of Europe on 186 metres medium wave, shortwave 49 metre band and the shortwave 31 metre band. The 49 metre band is 6.20 megacycles, and also on the FM band for listeners in Holland. Goedemorgen to you, dames en heren, I think that's... Sorry about my pronunciation. I do try, alstublieft. That's 102 megacycles.
R&I, where the action is.
On the afternoon of the 23rd of March 1970, the Mebo 2 left her anchorage and headed for the English coast.
I'd like to wish you a very good evening on behalf of all the staff of Radio Nordsee International, and welcome back to our programmes. We apologise for the short break in transmission, but this was necessary in preparation of our short journey to England.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to repeat our previous message. The Mebo 2 is now leaving the coast of Holland. We at Radio Nordsee International would like to take this opportunity to extend to our friends in Holland, especially all of the people in Scheveningen and the Grand Hotel, for their friendly cooperation during the first 2 months of broadcasting. As we cross the North Sea, we leave you with our most heartfelt thanks. To the people of Great Britain, we can only say, we are on our way.
When we sailed to England, it was electric, the atmosphere. It was rather like reliving the Johnny Walker thing about sailing up the River Thames and knocking down Tower Bridge on the way. It was great fun.
R.N.I. makes me happier than I ever been before.
A pirate radio ship was early today preparing to anchor off the east coast and beam pop music to England. The Swiss-owned pirate ship Mebo 2, which broadcasts Radio North Sea International, left the Dutch coast yesterday evening announcing that they were moving to a position off the Essex coast outside British territorial waters.
The psychedelically painted Mebo 2 dropped anchor off Holland-on-Sea, Essex, at a position of 51 degrees 42.5 minutes north, 01 degrees 17 minutes east.
4, 3, 2, 1.
It's blast off time on Funny Radio. We're going into orbit.
Actually, it's very nice to be here, well, you know, in our old position, looking at lots of things. I look at my cabin window and all that sort of thing. But there's only one drawback. Yes, you know I haven't said anything about it so far. It's that dreadful tender ride back again.
The decision to sail the ship to the English coast proved to be a bad move for R.N.I. The medium wave signal caused interference to the Walton-on-the-Naze Coast Guards. So the medium wave transmitter was switched off until a new wavelength was found.
This is Radio Nordsee International, currently broadcasting on the 49-meter shortwave band, 6.210 megacycles, and on Channel 50, FM 102 megacycles. A repeat of our earlier message, a telex recently received from Zurich, that we must turn off our medium wave transmitter for at least 2 days. We have now confirmed that there has been interference with coastal communications. For this, the management of Radio Nordsee International extends their sincere apologies to all concerned.
What good are friends if you never call on them? Your best friend station.
On the 10th of April 1970, the station returned to the air on 190 meters, 1578 kilohertz.
Now 10 minutes past 1, and we've little information for you that other than the fact that Radio Nordsee International, which is the big news of the day, is on the air today for the first time, and we'll be going through until 2 o'clock, and then from now on, 5:30 a.m. to 2 a.m. each and every day, and 190 meters on the medium wave band, 1578 kilocycles, or on the FM band at Channel 50, 102 megacycles. And the other little tidbit of information we have for you is that Paul McCartney now says he's no longer a Beatle. You're tuned to the big sound of Radio Nordsee International, 190 on your radio dial.
This is the place that's gonna blow your mind. The place that's gonna blow your mind. The place that's gonna blow your mind.
This is the sound of Radio Nordsee.
Sound of radio.
This is the sound of Radio Nordsee.
This is Radio Nordsee International, Europe's only all-day music station, broadcasting from 51 degrees, 42 minutes, 30 seconds north, 1 degree, 17 minutes east, on 190 meters on the medium wave band. Also broadcasting in short wave on the 49-meter band, 6.210 megacycles, and in FM on Channel 50, 102 megacycles.
On the air from 5:30 a.m. to 2 a.m., this is Radio Nordsee International.
And now the right time from Bulliver is exactly 5 o'clock. Bulliver, who invented Accutron, the electronic tunic fork watch.
For those connected with R.N.I, this seemed to be the end of their problems. But not so. 5 days later, the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications, under the direction of Mr. John Stonehouse, commenced jamming the medium wave transmission with an 800 Hz tone from a naval radio station at Rochester. It was stated at the time that this was being done at the request of Italy and Norway.
And this is Andy Archer sitting in for Alan West on the Alan West Show through until 8 o'clock tonight. And Alan will be back on Friday evening, I believe. And Roger, Duncan, myself, and also Hannibal are going away on 2 weeks holiday. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Alan, Mark, Carl and Axel coming out.
It's interesting to note that not even in times of war has the British government ever jammed a broadcast station.
It's the happening place, Radio Nordsee. It's the happening place, Radio Nordsee.
R.N.I left the air at 8:30 p.m. that night and returned at 9 p.m. on the 30th of April 1970 on 217 metres, 1385 kilohertz, and also on a new FM frequency of 100 megahertz.
Following frequency adjustment, this is Radio Nordsee International on test transmissions. Our medium wave band length is now 217 meters, 1385 kilocycles. We also broadcast on a new FM frequency, channel 43, 100 megacycles. Reception reports are welcome. Please send them to R.N.I, P.O. Box 113, Zurich 8047 in Switzerland. Once again, that's R.N.I, P.O. Box 113, Zurich 8047 in Switzerland. This is Radio Nordsee International on a test broadcast.
However, it was decided not to use the medium wave frequency, and a further move was made to 244 metres, 1230 kilohertz.
By the way, you must know by now that R.N.I is back on the OS on test transmissions only. Well, on test transmissions, how about that? 244 metres, 1230 kilocycles is our new medium wave frequency.
And on the 16th of May, regular programmes recommenced. But 5 days later, jamming started at the request of Czechoslovakia.
You tune to Radio Nordsee International, your friendly station, on 244 metres, which is 1230 kilocycles, and also on VHF, channel 43, 100 megacycles.
R.N.I retaliated.
Do you honestly believe any government that passes the Marine Offences Bill, which forbids English people from working or advertising with Radio Nordsee International, or indeed any offshore commercial radio station, and it also says it protects the freedom of the individual? Well, it just can't protect the freedom of the individual with this particular bill, and also with the jamming of Radio Nordsee, it proves that they certainly don't. So, if you want to protect freedom of speech, of choice, opinion, and you believe in human rights, the free choosing whatever radio station you want to listen to, well, I'll tell you what you can do about it. There is something you can do, It's no use sitting back and saying, oh, it's very sad, but there's nothing we can do. This is the opinion, if you have this opinion, then Radio Nordsee International will not be able to continue. So that's a good way of doing it if you don't want us to continue. But if you do want us to continue, there are some things you can do. For instance, telephone one of these numbers now, and do it right away, and ask them what you can do to help Radio Nordsee International, and so help fighting for freedom of the individual in Britain. There's Rayleigh Essex 4259, Rayleigh 4259. Secondly, we have 01272 0592, a London number, 01272 0592, and thirdly and finally 01203 3386, 01203 3386. We want you to work together with us. If you fight for R.N.I, it's your freedom and the freedom of your friends that we are fighting for.
Radio Nordsee. Music.
What good are friends if you never call on them? Your best friend station.
The following is a statement issued by the directors of Radio Nordsee International. When Radio Nordsee International first began broadcasts, it soon became apparent our transmissions were causing interference with lifeboat service broadcasts, and for this reason Radio Nordsee International changed frequency to 244 meters. This frequency was chosen so that it would not interfere with any emergency broadcasts, nor would it interfere with any legally authorized broadcasting station. The interference that you can hear on 244 meters is intentional, and so designed to discourage Radio Nordsee International bringing you the programs you want to hear. Radio Nordsee International, having done nothing illegal, has received no official complaints and therefore presumes it is other broadcast transmissions that are causing interference on 244 meters. Radio Nordsee International further presumes that these transmissions which cause the interference will cease and allow Radio Nordsee International to bring you the programs that you want to hear on 244 meters, 1230 kilocycles.
R.N.I. spells happiness.
On the 13th of June 1970, the week preceding the 1970 general election, the Caroline organisation used the transmitters of R.N.I. and started an anti-Wilson campaign with its aim to ensure that a Labour government was not re-elected. Posters portraying Harold Wilson as Chairman Mao were displayed all over London. A rally was organised in Trafalgar Square, and a special Caroline bus toured marginal constituencies in an effort to bring a Conservative government to power.
Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Wilson, if you think free radio's down? We are the boys who will stop your little game. We are the boys who will make you think again. So who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Wilson, if you think free radio's down? Mr. Stonehouse starts to jam at 5:21. And he goes home at 2 a.m. His dirty work is done. So watch out, Mr. Wilson, you have met your match in us. If you think you can crush us, we're afraid you've missed a bus. So who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Wilson, if you think the radio's down?
Radio Caroline is surviving. It's all because of you, and you are making it all possible. Right now, it's 28 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. In the afternoon, you're all on your way to number 10. Wait a minute, Roger Day is here. Twiggy is here to talk to you.
Yes, I really would like to say that in my greatest expectations, I never realised that so many people would turn out in our cause, and well, you've made all the disc jockeys and the crew on board very proud and very happy to be, part of you. And right now, I'm very proud to be British, and I'm proud of you too. So thank you very much for turning up. Back to Larry.
Right. I think what we're doing right now is unbelievable. I hope that everyone realizes what our fight is all about. I hope everyone realizes that if you believe in freedom and if you believe in the freedom of choice, if you believe that what we are doing is important, and you do, of course, because you are there and you are marching and you are going down the street, I think you should all wave your hands in the air right now and jump for joy, because this meeting is so fantastic, and I hope that Harold gets our message. I hope he does.
Caroline, the sound of the land. Caroline, the sound of the nation. Caroline!
We interrupt this program to bring you a Caroline Newsbeat news flash. This is your chance to fight for free radio. Vote for free radio on Thursday. Your weapon is the vote.
Be a Caroline girl. Your help is needed urgently to fight for Radio Caroline and for your freedom. You'll be working with TV star Simon D., Caroline's first disc jockey, and Ronan O'Reilly, the man who brought offshore radio to Britain. Join the team working on the Caroline buses. Call immediately London 629-8606. Today, telephone London 01629-8606. Or if you are in London, call at number 19 Hayes Mews, London West 1, near to Berkeley Square. That's 19 Hayes Mews, London West 1, where you'll receive a very, very warm welcome in the spirit of the campaign for Radio Caroline and your freedom.
Yes, thank you very much, Alan, and very true words there. And, well, I know we are sort of going on about political things here, and that isn't really what a radio station is all about, but this is something we've been forced in by a very dictatorial attitude. I mean, if you remember, the Marine Offences Bill was passed. It made it very difficult for Caroline to survive, and it resulted, actually, in the Caroline going off the air before, on March the 3rd, 1968. Now, I was on board the ship at that time, and I felt very sad, and I think we all on board felt, well, a tremendous loss at the time, and I wonder if you felt that loss there at the same time, probably, and you wish you could have done something about it, don't you, and stopped us going off the air. Well, now we're back, you see, And none of us on board really want to go through that again and for Caroline to have to go off the air, because I think I'd probably speak for Andy, who's on board, and Carl at the same time, and that we wouldn't really want to be on board if Caroline would have to go off the air this time, because it would just be too sad, and we probably couldn't think of anything to say, and we'd rather be off the ship at the time.
And we have a look at the Radio Caroline news at this time, and first of all, the general election. This is Andy Archer reporting. The opinion poll fast goes on as 3 more results were issued early this morning. The Labour lead over the Conservative varies from 2% to 7%. In terms of seats in the next Parliament, this would give Labour a majority of anything from 20 to 100. The Harris poll in the Daily Express predicts a lead of 2%. The National Opinion poll in the Daily Mail gives a lead of 4.1%, I'm sorry about that, and the Gallup poll in the Daily Express gives 7%. And according to the Harris poll, the Conservatives have a definite advantage in key marginal seats. The polling booths open at 7 o'clock this morning. And finally, the Caroline weather. England and Wales will be rather cloudy, although sunny spells will occur chiefly in the north. Showers or further outbreaks of rain are expected, especially in the Midlands, southeast England, parts of East Anglia and Wales. Temperatures will be similar or probably a little higher than yesterday, and the outlook for the weekend, dry in the north, and in the south, well, we can expect rain and a forecast of some showers as well. This has been News and Weather with Andy Archer reporting, and public service announcement. The polling booths are open today from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. This is General Election Day, Thursday, June the 18th, 1970. And Radio Caroline also advises you to use your vote. It's 2 minutes after 8 o'clock on Caroline.
The Conservative government have won the 1970 general election.
Just how much help the election campaign gave cannot be accurately ascertained, but it was the first time that 18-year-olds were able to vote. On the 20th of June 1970, the station changed its name back to R.N.I.
You get a positive charge here on Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee, Radio Nordsee.
Further transmitter moves were made to 217 metres, 1385 kilohertz, and then back to 244 metres in an attempt to dodge the jamming. But the jamming continued.
Following control of our transmitter, this is Radio Nordsee International, return to the airwaves of 244 meters, 1230 kilocycles in the medium wave band, and an FM channel 43, 100 megacycles.
On the 23rd of June, the station closed, and the Mebo 2, defeated, headed back to Holland, where broadcasting recommenced at 7 a.m. the following day.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mark Wesley here, welcoming you to a day's transmission from Radio Nordsee International on 244 meters in the medium wave band, 1,230 kilocycles, also broadcasting on FM, channel 43, 100 megacycles.
The jamming by the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications had now stopped. Alan West.
Yes, when the jamming continued after the election, the Conservatives were in power and Heath was appointed Prime Minister. We thought, oh well, this is it. Switch it off now. We can carry on as though nothing had ever happened. But unfortunately, it didn't work out like that. Nothing ever seemed to be working out the way we wanted it, and the jamming carried on. I think we were even more angry then. We in fact, we felt that we'd been used and duped, and that we'd probably blackened our names forever in the process. I think everyone became very despondent then, and I think we were happy when Mebo decided to move the ship back to Holland.
Although the ship was back off Holland, R.N.I's problems continued. Interference was caused on medium wave to the Dutch network station Hilversum 3. An immediate change of frequency was necessary, and on the 3rd of August 1970, the station recommenced on 217 metres, 1385 kilohertz. And after further problems that month, the station changed frequency yet again to 220 metres. Things at last seemed to be improving for the Mebo 2. After all her trials and tribulations, who could think something else could happen? But it did. Just before 1:30 p.m. on the 29th of August 1970, the launch the Viking and the tug Husky were seen heading for the Mebo 2.
7 minutes now away from 2 o'clock, and we have to apologise to you for interrupting our normal programme schedule with these urgent messages, but as you can probably appreciate, something rather drastic has happened, or they're trying to make something happen which we won't stand for. We're refusing to allow anybody on this radio ship, and if you've just joined us, perhaps you'd like to be put in the picture that a tug has come alongside, along with a person by the name of Kees Manders, who apparently is a well-known figure in Holland, and he is trying to take the ship away. Our captain has only allowed him on board and nobody else, and that will remain that way. We're not going to let anybody else on board the ship, only Mr. Manders, to hear what he's got to say, but Radio North Sea International will stay broadcasting until we receive a definite order from our head office in Zurich. So if anybody is listening in Zurich or in London or in our office in The Hague in Scheveningen, perhaps they would like to do something, perhaps send a boat out, or perhaps try to make contact with us on the short wave.
Spangles Muldoon takes up the story.
Mark Wesley came down and said there's a little boat, it was only a little cabin cruiser at first, coming quite close to us, play them the record, they're waving to us. So we played them a couple of records, and then out of the mist came a tug called the Husky. It was a big tug, and it had all the equipment on to cut the anchor and everything. And it got quite menacing within about 5 or 10 minutes. You know, the whole theme of the programme had changed dramatically from playing records to them to sort of almost putting out SOSs, but we'd still kept reasonably low key over this. And then Mark came down, and Carl Mitchell was with him this time, who was senior disc jockey, and said there really is problems now, that they're trying to talk to our captain and they want us to switch off the transmitter and go in with them. And they send a chap across, which I think is ship law, that if somebody wants to speak to the captain does have to speak to them. Just one person came across.
And we have a few more details now for those people who might like to know. The tug is in fact called the Husky and is now going round us in decreasing circles. I think that's the right term. And we could still do with a bit of help, I feel. Here's Andy.
Well, the situation is none of us are sure what's happening at the moment, but this certainly isn't an authorised tug, and we have no tugs. The Mebo is in no need of a tug because we have perfectly good engines. So we're not exactly sure what is happening, but a tug is going by, and the captain, and also a small launch. The captain allowed one of the men aboard the ship, but he refused to let any more on board, which is his prerogative, and this is the way it's going to stay until we receive details or instructions from our head office. So once more, we'd like to make a call to our head office in Zurich, or if anybody's listening in our London office or in The Hague, perhaps you could try and get a message out to us on the shortwave link.
And they threatened to pour water on the aerial. I think I was responsible for stopping that. I don't know if what I said was right, actually, that if they had sprayed water on the aerial, they would have put us off the air, but they also could have electrocuted themselves. Thinking about it, they probably wouldn't have done, but the way we built it up on the air, they didn't do
It
it.
seems they're going to spray water onto the antenna, which apart from tripping out our transmitter, would also give whoever did it a very lethal shock. So by all means, spray the area with water if it makes you feel any better.
And the banging you can hear in the background is that we're taking all security precautions and locking up the hatches to save anybody from coming down into the studio itself. So once more, we must tell you that there's a raid taking place at the moment, an unauthorised raid, and we're doing our best to stop everybody coming on board. So all we ask is for all our friends on the shore, that's at our head office, and also in our other offices all over the place, to send out help to us.
And just as it was getting to a point where there could have been a battle, Meister came out on another very fast boat, loomed out of the mist, and just as they arrived, and they just cleared off into the mist and never seen again. But we caused all sorts of havoc at that time. We were putting out distress calls about every 3 records to say that if they'd like to call the Mebo office or call the Grand Hotel, and we gave the numbers out, and we jammed up the entire switchboard in Switzerland and caused all sorts of problems. And I think the same thing happened at the Grand Hotel. Every line was full for about a whole day afterwards, people ringing up asking if it was okay and could they help. I know my wife phoned from Birmingham and they knew the number already. As soon as she picked up the phone and said she was trying to make a call to Switzerland, they just said, yes, everything's under control. So it seemed that most switchboards throughout England were fully aware of us.
And we stand by for a word from the Managing Director of Radio North Sea International.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience today that you've had, but unfortunately we've had problems out here. And I'm glad the disc jockeys have done their part in keeping you informed, and that's what R.N.I plans to do, is keep you informed of everything. that goes on out here. I am out here right now with the owner of Radio Nordsee International from Mebo Limited in Zurich, Switzerland, and we hope we don't have too many problems. At the moment, the ships have pulled off, but we are sure, as they have told us, that they are coming back. They have brought a child and a woman on one of the ships to kind of deter us from doing anything to them, although it is our intention, as the owner of the station has said to the captain of the trip that brought us out here, only the agent from the shipping company in Holland, myself, and the owner, Mr. R.N.I. Meister, has come out to the Mebo. Many people wanted to come out to help us. We told them they could not come on our ship. We are not interested in any fights. We are not interested in any deaths at sea. This station is not around to make trouble. This station is around to provide you with musical entertainment. And this is the reason that we asked only the shipping agent, Mr. R.N.I. Meister, and myself, Larry Tremaine, to come out here to the Mebo 2 to see what the problem was. We have contacted our attorneys, our solicitors in Holland, and we are trying to do our utmost to do the best for you. So please stay tuned. Thank you all very much for lighting up the switchboard at the Grand Hotel. We appreciate that very much. Also, thank you very much for lighting up the switchboard in Zurich. As I understand, all the lines were flooded, showing your continued support for Radio Nordsee International. We are not saying at this time that we do not still need help, because at this time they have pulled away, but we are sure they are coming back. Mr. Mundus has no right to take this ship. There has never been a contract signed with him. There is no agreements between him and Radio Nordsee International. This I can assure our listeners implicitly that there is no agreement and there is no reason for this action whatsoever. We are very sorry for all this trouble. We are very sorry to interrupt music like this, but you can understand our involved situation out here. We will protect the Mebo 2 to the utmost. We will not leave this ship. We are prepared for them, although we do not want a fight. We do not want any deaths or anybody hurt at all. It went so far as to tell them when they plan to put water on the transmitter, the disc jockeys, just by thinking of the people on the ship and not thinking of themselves, told them not to put water on the transmitter because it would kill everybody on the tugboat. This we did not have to do, but we did it because we are a music station. We are not around to injure or endanger any lives whatsoever. So please stay tuned. If you wish to help, we want it. But meanwhile, stay with us.
What good are friends if you never call on them? Your best friend station.
On the 22nd and 23rd of September 1970, the World Service was introduced on shortwave.
This is R.N.I's World Service, broadcasting in the shortwave bands at 6,205 kHz in the 49-meter band and also at 9,935 kHz in the 31-meter band. R.N.I's World Service, to the world with music.
On the 23rd of September at 9 p.m, a message was received from the shore stating that R.N.I was to close at 11 a.m. the following day.
Radio Nordsee from the Mebo. Rock on, rock on!
Alan West takes up the story.
I remember that we first learned about the closure very late at night. I can't remember how. I think it was telephoned out to the ship, radio telephone, something like that. There was an instruction to go on the air immediately and make a statement to dribble something about Veronica. I mean, what I wrote for that announcement about the Dutch government and the people in Radio Veronica was a load of garbage. I just invented it off the top of my head because something had to be said to cover up the real reasons why we were closing, which of course we didn't know. We just thought the station had run out of money. That was why we were shutting down.
Radio Nordsee is voluntarily closing down this morning at 11 o'clock. Due to the pressure in the Dutch Parliament to close down the offshore stations, our directors in Zurich feel that it would be better for the people of Holland for us to suspend broadcasting, so that the Dutch government will not attempt to close down Radio Veronica, so dearly loved by the people of Holland for the past 10 years. Radio Nordsee International thanks you all for your support in the past month during our times of drama and struggle. Thank you for being faithful to us. We closed this morning at 11 o'clock.
Well, considering everything that we've been through in 1970, tremendous defeat, mostly sadness, and quite a good deal of disappointment because we were suddenly to be out of a job.
Hello, this is Alan West for the last time on Radio Nordsee International. Well, as usual, I'm lost for words, but I want to say that I feel it is very sad that we are closing now. We have achieved more on this station than any of the other offshore stations, and given time we could have achieved far more. In summing up, I feel proud of this station and proud of the people I've worked with. We've been through a lot together and come out smiling, and I'm sure we'll all come out smiling from this. All of the announcers on R.N.I have a great future ahead of them, and I wish them well. Thank you to Mr. Bollier and Mr. Meister and to everyone around me for all the encouragement, and thank you for your support. Goodbye.
It was very camp, the last hour, very camp, and it was done on purpose. I think Andy and I had this thing about Radio London and TW and the way things were done out there, and we decided we wanted to do a real tearjerker, and it sounded as though we meant it, although I think when we went in the studio to do it, we didn't mean it. We were still laughing over it. But by the time we were halfway through, it was beginning to get through to us.
And as the clock ticks away, the time gets near.
Both Helen and myself joined the station at exactly the same time, so together we'll say goodbye.
What good are friends if you never call on them? Your best friend station.
From Alan West, it's goodbye.
And from me, Andy Archer, it's goodbye too.
And from R.N.I, it's goodbye.
And God bless.
It was later reported that Radio Veronica had paid the Mebo organisation the sum of 1 million guilders to keep R.N.I off the air.
It's the happening place, Radio Nordsee. It's the happening place, Radio Nordsee. It's the happening place, Radio Nordsee.
The Mebo 2 remained at sea, and on the 14th of February 1971, the station was back on the air testing.
Dit is Radio Noordzee met een proefuitzending op 220 meter middengolf. U kunt ons ook beluisteren op 49 meter korte golf of via de FM-band kanaal 44. Dat wil zeggen 100 megahertz. Ons adres is Radio Noordzee, postbus 117 Hilversum. Voor alle informaties in zaken publiciteit over deze zender, Radio Noordzee, postbus 117 Hilversum. U zult in de toekomst nog meer van Radio Noordzee horen. Nu kunt u luisteren naar een non-stop grammofoonplatenprogramma van Radio Noordzee.
I went down to pick up my ticket at Swissair and went down to Heathrow and flew over. And there was Bruno and Steve Merrick at the airport to meet me, and we had a hair-raising drive down the mountains into Zurich in Bruno's, I think it was a Thunderbird or something. He was a maniac driver. Anyway, we got to Zurich and we stayed in a quaint little Swiss-type hotel called the Hotel Rossley. We went to Bollier's High Life Club to record the test tapes, and we spent about 2 weeks there, if I remember rightly, doing that. We had a great time, on Bollier's expenses, going out to nightclubs and buying new suits. It was very nice. Then we went off to Holland and we stayed in the Grand in Scheveningen for a couple of days. Steve Merrick and I went out to the ship together in a beaten up old East German coastal freighter with water leaking through the bridge roof, and there was a force 8 blowing. It was a dreadful night. We got out to the Mebo and we went round and round 2 or 3 times hooting away, and no one heard us. Then when we went alongside, the rumblings and bangings brought everyone up from the bells of the ship, and we got alongside and tied up, and we it was then that we realised that the wind was much stronger than we'd thought, and the sea was smashing up between the 2 ships and were bashing together, and Bollier was saying, no, pull away, you damaged my ship. And Merrick was getting really upset by this time. He'd had enough, and he threw his suitcase over the edge and jumped. He must have gone about 8 feet, I think, through the air. And once he'd gone, I thought, well, I'm not going to go back and leave him there on his own. So I threw my case and jumped as well. And there was Meister standing there saying, "Don't jump, you'll kill yourself. Don't jump." Anyway, we got on board, and there we were, the two of us, for 2 weeks on our own, with just the crew to keep us company. And I think Kurt Beer was there. I think just one transmitter engineer. And it was a very together atmosphere for those 2 weeks, and we got on very well. We had to, and we spent very long hours not only doing test transmissions and running the tapes, but making jingles and putting together our ideas for the format and for the programs, and just getting everything ready.
Radio North Sea International will be on the air 20 hours per day with music and entertainment, especially for you on your particular radio. And we'd like to hear from you, especially at this time. We'd like to hear from you concerning our reception in your area. And please address your reception reports on postcards only, please, to Radio North Sea International, in brackets, reception reports, P.O. Box 113 8047, Zurich, in Switzerland. And if this is the first time that you've tuned to Radio North Sea International, may I welcome you to this test transmission, and may I ask you also if you may like to pick up your phone and tell your friends that we're back on the air, or if your friends live next door or a couple of doors away, why not take the tranny round and prove to them on the spot that R.N.I. is back and on full power.
In fact, we worked harder in those 2 weeks, I think, than we worked at any time since that.
Full programmes recommenced on the 20th of February with an all-day English service until Dutch programmes were introduced on the 7th of March, and on the 21st of March, the world service was gradually reintroduced.
2 or 3 days before, actually, before we got on the air, officially, Martin Kane and Chris St. John and one or two others came out to the Shipboard. Dave Rogers, I think, was among them. And we sort of sat down in the big studio and said, right, what are we going to do? We'd already decided, Steve and I, that we would have an official opening hour to compete with the final hour we'd had the year before. And we just decided the order in which we would do it, what we would put in it, and that was it. And then Vic Pelly came out, and we got the word to actually go on the air officially, and we planned it for that following Sunday, and there it was.
Reopening Radio North Sea International, this week's number one sound in our Super Hit 50, that's Gilbert O'Sullivan and Nothing Rhymed. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the sound of Radio North Sea International, Europe's number one music station.
It actually went off very well that day. Very well. Everything went to plan. I mean, the place was chaos. Everything was falling out of the studio racks. It was a bit of a rough day, and there were people being seasick, and it was chaos, but it was good fun, and it went off very well.
The time now is exactly 30 seconds out of 3 o'clock. So, Alan, if you'd like to move to the back of the studio.
Yeah.
I think there's one thing left to do, and that is for all of us, the 6 English announcers aboard Radio North Sea International, to have this station well and truly opened. So, are you ready?
Yep.
Are you ready, Alan?
Yep.
I now pronounce this station well and truly opened. Thank you very much. The time on Radio North Sea International is now exactly 3 o'clock. And now, Tony Allen with the Top 50 show.
I think it was just the general euphoric atmosphere that was making everything go so well. And the best programme that I think I ever did was that very first one at 6 o'clock on that day. It's the best one I think I've ever done.
We're all of Alan West, we're all of Alan West.
Yes, every night between 6 and 8 on R.N.I, we all love Alan West, apparently.
You know that we love Alan West. You know that we love Alan West.
You're having fun on R.N.I Summer Sound.
Steve and I used to get in the studio sometimes, usually when I was drunk. He didn't drink much. And sing these stupid jingles. It really intended just as a fun exercise. But, I mean, they were diabolical. I listen to them now sometimes and I cringe.
TGIF. Thank goodness it's fun with.
Thank you, But for some reason, people liked them when we put them on the air. I don't know of anyone in the business who liked them, but I know that listeners liked them. They used to write in and say so.
Alan West, R.N.I.
Hey, look here, you happy heart.
you're having fun. Or was that something else? Stop the tape! Can I start that again? Yes, you're having fun with the Alan West Show.
Things seem to be running smoothly until the 15th of May, 1971.
Radio Nordsee International, the pop radio ship, is on fire off the Dutch coast.
We are having to abandon ship very soon. The entire stern end of the ship is on fire. Please call this telephone number, 0854-2447. 542447. SOS, Malibo 2 is being abandoned.
I was on the air at the time, and Dave, I think, had just come into the studio, had brought me a mug of tea or something, and there was this enormous bang, and the ship shuddered. You could feel it move. It literally, it must have come out of the water for a few seconds before it dropped back in. And my first thought was, we've been rammed. We've been hit by something, a fishing boat or an oil tanker in distress, although it would have probably been turned over if that had been the case. Dave sort of looked at me with very glazed eyes and rushed out of the studio and came back a few seconds later and said, "We're on fire." Then, in the few moments that he'd been away, it had sunk into me that what had happened. Some intuitive thing told me that we'd been blown up. Couldn't explain why. And I said, "Yes, Dave, I know." And from there on until the moment when the trip came alongside and took us off, my memory of the whole thing is total confusion.
You're listening to a transmission from the radio ship Mebo 2. This is Radio Nordsee International, still broadcasting in the medium wave, shortwave and in FM bands. Please stay tuned to these frequencies for further information. The fire, which we reported just now, had started in the engine room, has now reached the bridge. We will soon have to abandon ship. The last abandoned ship call was a false one. The last abandoned ship call was a false one. We may have to abandon ship soon. We need help. SOS. SOS. This is Radio Nordsee International. Mebo 2 anchored 4.5 miles from the coast of Scheveningen in Holland. At a time like this, I can't even say Scheveningen. Scheveningen in Holland. 4.5 miles from the coast by the radio ship R.N.I. Veronica. We are on fire due to a bomb thrown on board from a motor launch, whose identity we do not know. We didn't even see the launch. We need help immediately. We need help immediately. SOS, SOS, Mayday, 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 Mayday. We may have to abandon ship. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We may have to abandon ship. The fire has now reached the bridge. We do not know when we shall have to abandon ship, but it may be within the next few minutes. We are on fire in the engine room. The fire has now reached the bridge.
I've been told several times by various people since that on the tape of those couple of hours I sound very calm and collected. In actual fact I wasn't. I was scared shitless for the entire 2 hours, and if I'd realised, as I later discovered, that the fuel tanks for the generators were packed around the studios, I wouldn't have been anywhere near that bloody place.
This is Radio Nordsee International, an SOS call. This is Mayday, 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 Radio Nordsee International from the Mebo 2 at exactly 52 degrees 11 minutes latitude, 52 degrees 11 minutes latitude, 4 degrees 16 minutes longitude, 52 degrees 11 minutes latitude, 4 degrees 16 minutes longitude. 4 miles from the coast of Scheveningen, Holland. 1 mile from the radio ship R.N.I. Veronica. We are having to abandon ship very soon. The bridge and the engine room are on fire. The fire is taking control of the ship. The fire was caused by a bomb thrown on board from a small motor ship. A small motor launch with an outboard motor. A small motor launch with an outboard motor. We don't know who it belongs to. We don't know where it came from or where it's going to. But it certainly bombed us while it was here.
But I sat there and did the Mayday calls because it seemed the only thing to do. I mean, there was no other contribution I could make, really, apart from chucking buckets of water on the fire, so I just stayed in the studio and got on with it.
Fire caused by a bombing in the engine room on Radio Nordsee International, the radio ship Mebo 2. Once again, our exact position, please listen carefully, 52 degrees, 11 minutes north latitude, 4 degrees, 16 minutes longitude, west. East. 4 degrees, 16 minutes east longitude, 52 degrees, 11 minutes latitude north. This is the Mebo 2. This is the Mebo 2 on fire. This is the Me-Boat 2 on fire. SOS, Mayday, 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 SOS. This is an SOS call from Radio Nordsee International. Once again we have trouble. Somebody's bombed us this time.
We abandoned ship about 5 times, clambered over the side the first time and got into the rubber dinghy. And I got my feet wet. And I remember thinking I was very annoyed because I had new shoes on. I just bought them a couple of weeks before. And then we clambered back up on the ship again when they said it was okay, and then we got down into the rubber dinghy again, and then eventually we got back up onto the ship, went across the other side, and by that time the trip had arrived, and we got into that. And we sailed away to watch the fire raging from afar. It was really a sad sight. The whole stern end of the ship was ablaze. The flames must have been leaping about 20 feet into the sky. It was a nauseating sight. There was a Dutch government ship out there. I think it was something to do with oil rigging. That was out there and it turned its hoses onto the fire. And a couple of tugs came along and helped to fight the fire. I think that went on for about 2 hours. In the end, they got it down so that it was just smouldering rather than burning.
By 2:20 a.m. the following morning, the fire was under control.
It was about 3 o'clock. We discovered it was safe to go back on board. So the first ones on were Chris St. John and myself, and I went straight down to the transmitter room with Kurt Bear, and we climbed underneath the transmitter, and with a bit of wire out of my razor, I think we managed to get the transmitter back on the air. Apparently it wasn't damaged, but something had shorted out during the kerfuffle to get off the ship, and we got the transmitter back on the air. We went on the air for about 3 minutes, a little while after 3 o'clock. Yes, and the transmitters were putting out so much power that the Dutch rigging ship alongside, their antenna was starting to burn. It was collecting so much RF that it was shorting and sparking. I thought we'd set them alight as well.
Dutch police have arrested 3 men on suspicion of causing the fire on the pirate radio ship Radio Nordsee International. Police say they found parts of a rubber dinghy and frogman suits on a deserted beach near The Hague.
After the incident itself, the spirit on board Me-Boat had never been higher. It was fantastic. And of course we'd got such tremendous TV news coverage and front pages and press all over the world, all over the Western world, right? We were totally elated by this, and our listenership must have shot up by 100% that day. We'd never felt happier. You know, we were all alive, the ship was okay, we were still on the air, and we'd defeated whoever the opposition was.
Tuned to Radio Nordsee International. It's now 6:30 and time for the crew's messages. First of all, before we hear from the captain, if anybody's coming out to have a good look at the spectacle tonight or tomorrow morning, I expect a few people will be, perhaps you'd like to bring us some milk and sugar, because that's one of the few things we don't have, apart from a bridge. Hello, Captain.
Hallo Ellen, alles oké weer op de schip?
Ja, hoe is het? Goed?
Ja.
Ja, no
Waar is al mijn roem?
Geen brug, hè?
Nee, no room. Ik wil nogmaals dank uitbrengen aan de bemanning van de Koninklijke Noord-Hollandse Redding.
The repairs, estimated at £28,000, were carried out at sea.
You're tuned to Radio Nordsee International, broadcasting in medium wave at 220 meters, 1,367 kilohertz. In shortwaves, 31 meter and 49 meter bands at 9,935 kilohertz and 6,205 kilohertz. And finally in FM 100 megahertz, channel 44. Summertime R.N.I is now closing down for the night. We hope that you've enjoyed our programs today and that you'll tune in again sometime tomorrow. We recommence transmissions at 6 hours Central European Time with Peter Holland. The English program begins at 16 hours with Mike Ross. Now from the management and staff, the captain and his crew, and disc jockeys Peter Holland, Jan van Veen, Joost de Dreyer, Ferry Mart, Mike Ross, Alan West, Crispian St. John, Mark Stewart, Stevie Merrick and Dave Rogers, we wish you a very good night.
Dit is Radio Nordsee International. Dit is Radio Noordzee Internationaal.
This weekend and every weekend, R.N.I goes
24 hours a day
with programs in Dutch and English. Theme to the world.
24 hours a day.
What a lineup of international personalities. As R.N.I goes
24 hours a day.
Sunday sees the world service on shortwave. The in-concert program. The British Top 20, plus a solid hour of R.N.I. hit backs.
24 hours a day.
And it's all on R.N.I.
24 hours a day.
This weekend and every weekend, as R.N.I goes.
24 hours a day. Nordsee International. Nordsee International. Nordsee International.
Radio Noordzee Internationaal. Dit is Dreammaster.
Ontdekt bij de HEMA.
Bij de HEMA.
Verbaas u bij de HEMA.
Bij de HEMA.
Doe meer, doe meer, doe meer met minder geld bij de HEMA.
Bij de HEMA hebben ze dat moderne voorgelijmde behang. In wel 20 cents. En al vanaf 6,25 een rol. Voorgelijmd behang.
Stimmerol gum, Stimmerol gum, Stimmerol chewing gum. Stimmerol is
The Sportsman's Gum.
Stimmerol chewing gum, Stimmerol chewing gum.
Travelling into the years gone by.
R.N.I.
Hit back.
This is Radio Nordsee International on 1367 kilohertz.
Music Radio. Music Radio. This is the happiest place. Radio Nordsee, the happiest place.
At 8:10 a.m. on the 22nd of November 1971, the Mebo 2 broadcast an SOS message to Scheveningen Radio. The ship had lost her anchor in force 12 winds and was drifting. Paul May takes up the story.
I can remember being woken about 20 minutes to 8, it must have been in the morning. I was thrown completely out of my bunk and landed on the floor. Duly picking myself up off the floor, I looked at my arm and I was gushing with blood. And like a fool, a week before I went off on holiday, I constructed a shelf just alongside my bed for laying my watch and personal effects, so on. And when I had been flung from the bed, or thrown from the bed, my arm had scraped along the side of the edge of the shelf, and I was bleeding profusely, as the saying goes. The next thing I knew was a knock on the door, and it was one of the Dutch crew members saying, to the bridge with life jackets, anchor chain broke, in his broken English. And I don't think I've ever been so frightened in my entire life as that went through me. Shivers went down my spines, and one spine. Yes, I only have one spine, contrary to popular opinion. Eventually staggered about trying to get dressed, and when I tried to put my trousers on, there was a technique in putting trousers on as well on a rocking boat. You had to sort of sit down on the edge of the bunk and pull them on, one leg at a time. Or two legs, if you prefer. Quickly get it over with. The boat lurched again, and I was thrown up against the same flipping shelf, and gashed the side of my head open. The door flung open at the same time, and I remember the other jockeys scurrying around in their cabins saying, "Oh, what are we going to do?" So I just advised them to put something warm on and to take their passport, of all things. My brain cells must have been dying at that time. We got dressed, or I was in the process of getting dressed. I got my trousers on and some boots on, but I couldn't put a shirt on because of the arm blood coming from the arm. And I flung the life preserver across my shoulder, and we staggered up to the bridge. Well, at this time, we were about 5 to 6 miles down the coast of Holland, and I could see the coastline coming closer. Leo van der Groot, who was the newsreader at that time, as the Dutch programs were on tape, was preparing his news when all this happened. And he closed the station down, put out an SOS, and we ceased then to broadcast. We closed the transmitters down because of the fact we were drifting into territorial waters. As I say, we were all up on deck at this time. The station was off the air. I think Franz, one of the engineers, Dutch engineers, technicians, took the crystals out of the transmitter and hid them up, supposedly, however the story goes. Well, at this particular time, our SOS message had to have been picked up because there was a lifeboat alongside us, as close as it would get. And if you can appreciate the fact we were standing on a bridge, to the sea level was about a 60-foot drop. An incredible sensation if you were to jump. They placed a net on this lifeboat, and Captain Hardevel, who was the captain at that particular time, ordered us to jump. He said, "Disc jockeys, jump." I grabbed onto the nearest pole, which happened to be supporting the TV area on the bridge, and I clung on that for dear life. I thought, no way, I'm going to hang on to this. You're going to have to pull me off of this, because there's no way I'm going to jump. Terry Davis, at this particular time, I can remember, was clinging on to the heating system, the radiator, and he was clinging onto that, and I don't think Terry moved from that particular spot through the entire 2.5-hour ordeal. That's how frightened that boy was. I was frightened. I thought, right, well, if this... I can remember then Captain Hardevel saying, all right, he said, if you're not going to jump, he said, you'll have to go down with the ship. So because he, in his broken English, and I think he had Leo, who was, as I mentioned, was a newsreader, interpret for us. And he was telling us that we would probably hit the rocks along the coast and would break up, and that would be our lot. He said you wouldn't live 5 minutes in the sea. If you didn't drown, you'd freeze to death. And it would probably be impossible, because of the currents and the tides, to be picked up by the lifeboat that was out there. I can remember, however, Mike Ross attempting to jump. He was on the lower deck, near the back of the stern of the boat, standing on the railings ready to jump. He didn't jump, so there we are. I can't remember him attempting to or thinking about it, because he was hanging on, put both feet on the railing and was ready to jump. I can remember going down to the production studio, and I thought, well, if this is my lot, I want people to know who I am, especially my family, my loved ones. And I made a tape, a very small, short tape. I think it lasted about 4 or 5 minutes. And things were crashing down in the studio, and I thought, this is my lot. And my voice, people don't like it under normal circumstances, but they ought to have heard it when it was full of nerves. I then took the tape off the Revox and wrapped it in a polythene bag and stuffed it inside my shirt. And I thought, well, if I go down, this is liable to survive, so they'll be able to tell who I was, so on. Just on the tape, I put a message to my loved ones. Went back to the bridge, and the next thing that I can remember happening was the fact that we were at least 15 to 20 miles down the coast. We were actually nearer Belgium than anything else, and that a tug was coming out to tie onto us and drag us about. And I can remember a Dutch Royal Navy Hercules, I think it was, an aircraft circling above us, and as I say, there was still a lifeboat, and we had contact with the shore with the ship-to-shore radio. And just strange things were happening. Everything was, everyone thought it was the end.
Ryan Mackenzie takes up the story.
Everyone was just so nervous. I remember Mike Ross passing around cigarettes in the hand, literally just shaking like a leaf. And Terry kept setting off this alarm buzzer with his head, because his head was nodding back and forward. And he kept hitting this alarm thing, which used to scare the hell out of everyone until he was dragged away from it, because everyone was really so tense. And Terry setting this thing off, giving you another fright. I mean, it was getting to the stage where someone would have just dragged him from it, anyway. And then we were going closer to the beach, and they couldn't get the engine started. There was something fault had developed, and they couldn't build up the pressure. So then they tried to drop the auxiliary anchors, and they went down, but they were being dragged, obviously. Just no way could this stop the thing. They got the engine started again, but they couldn't go forward because of the anchors. So they had welding torches, and they cut both anchors, and then the thing started to inch its way forward bit by bit. And by this time a tug had come out. They got a line across, and the first one snapped. And then they got a second one on, which held, and that was it. But at that point, I think we were about half a mile from the beach. I mean, you could see the beach as clear as hell. And then we, I think, for about 2 days, we were being towed up and down the coast. At one point, I think we were nearer Britain than we were Holland.
Time down, Radio Nordsee International, happens to be 10 o'clock, news time. R.N.I. Worldwide News.
Good evening, this is Terry Davis. 2 survivors from the camp. Now a progress report on the activities of the Mebo 2, that's us. The radio ship Mebo 2 has recently passed Imuden at the distance of approximately 6 miles and is at present at the following position: 52 degrees 16 minutes north, 4 degrees 2 minutes east. We are being towed by the tug Smithbank in a northerly direction along the coast of Holland, and we hope to anchor sometime tomorrow in calmer waters. This is R.N.I. News. The next bulletin will be at 11 o'clock.
We had contact with the shore with the ship-to-shore radio, and just strange things were happening. Everything was... everyone thought it was the end.
Nordsee 10:16.5 from Radio Nordsee International, swinging Europe time with Paul Bay, and well, I guess it's about time I get serious. I guess it's about time I get something off my chest too. Well, it's not often I apologize for my on-air performance, which can be bad at times, I must admit, but I feel for all those that heard the 7 o'clock news bulletin must have thought, what a bad performance. Also a rundown of what actually happened on board the Mebo 2 for the day. And I guess my only defense is, even though it might sound poor, but basically I was scared silly for my life this morning when the action took place, as I imagine most of the disc jockeys were. And I think it just got hold of me between the hours of 6 and 7. You kind of put it off in your mind that nothing's going to happen, and then your nerves grab hold of you, and that's basically what they did this evening. It may be a poor excuse, but well, I think I defy anyone to come out here and go through what the rest of the disc jockeys did and sit behind a microphone and sound happy and gay. And it's rather difficult. Anyway, I felt badly about it, and there were a lot of people interested in knowing what the activity was on board the Mebo 2 today. So I thought I'd give you a quick rundown on the highlights of what happened. So I guess in summing up, though, we can actually... the activity involving the radio ship Mebo 2 on this Monday, November the 22nd, was that of a frightening but a concerning incident. It was about 10 minutes of 8 this morning that it all started.
The funny part, really getting back to our old anchor position, and we were getting towed along there, and the tugboat wouldn't drop us. For some reason they wanted to keep pulling us around because they were making a lot of money out of it. So we had to cut the tow rope to stop the ship, because by then the engines were working perfectly. And the tugboat just carried straight on. It didn't even stop or anything, which was amazing at the time. Obviously they were trying to get as much money out of it as possible, and they made a fortune. I mean, to come out and pull you around must have cost a vast amount of money.
R.N.I. makes me happier than I've
Just before Christmas, the World Service closed, although AJ's DX program continued.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Wherever you may be listening in R.N.I.'s worldwide listening land, this is yours truly, AJ Behrens, with the September edition of Nordsee Goes DX. This time we have DX information, solution of the DX contest, P.O. Box 113 is calling thee, and the history of Radio Hauraki, New Zealand. Due to the length of the latter item, no station is highlighted in this edition.
During early 1972, R.N.I. was planning an all-day English service on an alternative frequency of 388 meters, 773 kilohertz, using the X-Radio 390 10.5 kilowatt transmitter. During the early hours of the 27th of March 1972, this transmitter was tested, unknown to the DJs who were talking in the studio.
Hello, but there's a short in that.
Is there?
Yes, just a wee bit. Anyway, yeah, you get the boys on it. Get the boys on it.
How's that deck?
That deck is still...
ill.
Are we...
extremely ill.
Yes, it's still ill. Are we going out in the air?
I have no idea.
Oh. Well, I won't say it then.
We're still putting out a beautiful signal upstairs.
Oh, we really are?
Oh, it's lovely, yeah. A little bit of hum, but
Yes, well, we wouldn't have said some.
We wouldn't have said some of the things we've just said had we known that.
Oh, tell it.
It was not until the 30th of September 1972 that the alternative English service started, but on a different frequency of 192 metres, 1562 kilohertz, and called R.N.I. 2. This was just after Radio Veronica had changed frequency to 538 metres.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the start of test broadcasts from Radio Nordsee International 2. We're transmitting on 192 metres in the medium wave band, 1562 kilohertz. Radio Veronica will be resuming their broadcasts at 1 o'clock Central European Time on 538 metres medium wave. That's 557 kilohertz. The management and staff of the Radio Nordsee network throughout Europe would like to take this opportunity to wish all of our friends over at Radio Veronica best of luck in the years to come. In order not to interfere with other transmitters on this frequency, we shall be closing down our test transmissions at 7 o'clock in the evening.
It is Radio Nordsee International.
On the 23rd of February 1973, the anchor chain broke once again, and the ship headed towards the coast. Don Allen broadcast an SOS message.
Well, I had finished my program. I'd read the news, and I thought it was rather peculiar at the time when I was reading the news. The ship sort of tipped over a little too much, as far as I was concerned, to the right or to the left. Anyway, I came upstairs after finishing the news and looked out the window. It was a very clear night, but I was very amazed to see the faces of people in cars going by, and I thought, well, this is a clear night, but this is bloody ridiculous. It's not that clear. I'm sure that we're, within about a mile from shore. And the captain and Mike Ross were playing cards at the time, and I said, are we drifting? The captain said, no, it's ridiculous. I said, well, at least come here and look over, out through the porthole window. They reluctantly got up and looked out the porthole window. As soon as they saw our position, everybody immediately mayday. Brian McKenzie's rock and roll show was going out at the time, and we immediately had to cease broadcasting. I went downstairs and said that as we thought we were inside of territorial waters, we are now going off air. We believe we're drifting, and sure enough, we were drifting. We were, I would say, at the closest, we were no more than 600 yards from shore.
The time is now 15 minutes to the hour of 1 o'clock Central European Time, and we stop transmissions as we believe that our anchor chain has broken. There is no need for alarm. The anchor chain on board the Mebo 2 has broken, and this has been spotted in time. We are now ceasing transmissions until we are safely back into international waters. This is Radio Nordsee International, now going off air. We have broken our anchor chain, or are dragging our anchor chain, and we are inside the 3-mile limit. We are going off air momentarily until we are back into international waters. So, once again, we repeat, Radio Nordsee International is going off air temporarily while we adjust our position off the coast of Skavingham.
And it was a very frightening experience. Everybody was told to put on their life jackets and forget about your suitcases, just worry about yourself, I could just imagine, had we drifted ashore, everybody in life jackets holding up their passports type of thing. Funny. But we did manage to get out to sea again. It took us, I think, a day and a half to eventually get the ship back out there. It was a steady grind because there was a storm going on. A storm brewed up after this, after we had broken anchor. And we were fighting against the storm, trying to get back to our position. And then at one stage, we went past Caroline. He thought that we were anchored and they were drifting, and they started sending up red flares, and it really caused a mayday crisis. Both ships were sort of panicking, especially Caroline, because they had no motor at all, and they were sending up red flares. The whole sea that night was lit up with red flares all over the place. From the Caroline ship, because they thought that they were drifting, and we knew that we were drifting. But as I say, eventually, a day and a half later, we got another anchor. The ship came out immediately and put a new anchor on the ship, and that was the end. I never experienced that again.
On AM, FM, and shortwave, this is Music for Young Europe on Radio Nordsee International.
220 R.N.I. Dynamite. Wonderful radio 220 R.N.I.
Dit is Radio Nordsee.
Auf Kurzwelle, Mittelwelle und UKW.
International.
Radio Nordsee makes you happy. Wonderful radio 220 R.N.I. On medium wave and short wave and FM. Radio.
This is the start of the international service on Radio Nordsee. R.N.I. broadcasts in the medium wave band at 220 meters, that's 1367 kilohertz, in the 49-meter short wave band at 6205 kilohertz, and on VHF channel 44 at 100 megahertz. Radio Nordsee International, the voice of Europe, the sound of the world.
220 R.N.I. Dynamite.
During 1974, the Dutch government were finalising their plans to close the offshore radio stations.
U bent aan het werk en de radio speelt op de zaak in de auto op tijd. Muziek van de Noordzee is altijd bij u met Radio 220.
Apart from R.N.I., there was Radio Veronica, Radio Caroline and Radio Atlantis.
Come on, sail away with Veronica today.
Radio Caroline. Radio Atlantis. Zet hem op.
R.N.I. is here to stay. It's never going away. We're gonna rock together. R.N.I. is radio, the station on the go. We're gonna roll together. So stomp your feet and get their beat. Just listen in to catch a spin. They're on the ball, they got it all at R.N.I. R.N.I. is here to stay. It's never going away. We're gonna rock together. R.N.I. is radio, a station on the go. We're gonna roll together. So stomp your feet and get that beat. Just listen in and catch a spin. They're on the ball, they got it all at R.N.I. You better believe it.
It was later announced that the Dutch Marine Offences Act would come into force on the 1st of September 1974.
Radio Nordsee, hou hem in de lucht. Radio Nordsee, hou hem in de lucht. Radio Nordsee, hou hem in de lucht.
R.N.I., along with Veronica and Atlantis, decided to close the day before, as did their English counterparts in 1967. However, as in 1967, Radio Caroline was to continue, but this time obtaining her supplies from Spain.
We knew the station was closing down for about a month, I think, before that. And, well, actually more than a month. The Dutch government kept postponing the date. I think it would be about a period of 6 months could have been involved in it, from when they originally said, that's it, we're going to close the stations down. And, of course, every week after that, you're waiting for the announcement to come that a date would be set. And then all of a sudden they said, right, that's it.
Radio Nordsee International Station.
Bob Noakes.
A couple of days before Nordsee went off the air, so it would have been about the 29th of August, all the Dutch disc jockeys, I think without exception, came out onto the ship. There was a plan at one time to have the Mebo 1 alongside for them to sleep on, but that didn't materialise, and they all had to sleep in our ship. They slept in the workshop. One of them even slept in the studio. They're sleeping all over the place, all these Dutch guys. They'd never been on the ship before except for visits, and they were actually living on the thing for 2 days. Fortunately, it was beautiful weather. They didn't get seasick. When they came out with an incredible armada of other ships. Do you remember that, Robin?
Oh, that was beautiful.
Dozens of these boats, all honking horns, sailing
as far
around.
as the eye could see, right over the horizon, just everywhere.
There must have been 20 odd of large,
more than
boats
that,
and
I'm
loads
sure.
of yachts and things going around. Amazing. Beautiful sunny day. And Gerrit Smit was doing his programme live on the bridge at that time, the Buitengats. And that was coming down very well, all this honking of horns going out over the air. Great fun.
Radio Nordsee International.
The final English programme from R.N.I. was broadcast between 8 p.m. and midnight on the 30th of August, 1974.
Don handled basically all the administration work, and for the final hour and the final night's programming, we basically worked it out between us, because most of our decisions were arrived at that way laterally because we had a good team out there. And for that, we basically put ideas together and decided we'd do our own little shows and then do the last hour, Don and I together.
Ryan Mackenzie, turn on a smile. Music.
A very good evening, everyone. It's 2 minutes past the hour of 8 o'clock. This is yours truly, Daffy Don Allen, with you. The final hour, my final hour with Radio Nordsee International. From now until 9 o'clock this evening, we've got music coming your way. From 9 until 10 p.m. this evening, it's Robin Banks. From 10 until 11, it's Brian McKenzie. From 11 until 12 midnight, it's the whole of the international service of R.N.I. Don Allen, Brian McKenzie, Robin Banks, Roger Kent, and Bob Nopes. Anyway, we welcome you on into our final broadcast here on the international service of Radio Nordsee International.
Fun loving R.N.I, the music machine. I am listening. I am listening. I am listening. I am listening into Robin Banks.
And that'll be for the last time, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
good.
I see. Go out of the studio, King Kong.
On your feet, R.N.I listeners, it's Robin Banks.
Hi, here is King Kong on the Robin Banks Show. That is a good show.
Niet normaal. Fun loving R.N.I loves you.
Timing's time in Central Europe is now exactly 11 o'clock, and we bring you the final hour of broadcasting from the English service of Radio Nordsee International.
R.N.I Mebo 2 rocks on.
It's 29 minutes now to the hour of 12 midnight here on Radio Nordsee International. This is yours truly, Daffy Don Allen, along with
Brian McKenzie. It's very, very difficult at times, isn't it? We were talking about Don and I before we came on to do the show for a close down. I've never had to do a close down on a station before. The last radio station I worked in, it closed and I was off the ship, and with Don I think it's been the same.
Well, actually, with me, the first time we sort of envisaged a shutdown. I was very, very lucky indeed. I did the final country and western jamboree on Radio Caroline North, and then, of course, lo and behold, unbeknown to us, in the middle of the night, we were towed away. And with Manx Radio, I spent about 7 hours putting together a final hour. And then I decided the next day, it was on a Saturday, that I would do it live. So I've still got that tape at home. I've never ever really played it. It was all full of sobs and things like this, but it's terrible, really. Anyway, for those of you tuning in for the first time, I imagine there is quite a few listening in to
Get ourselves together for lots of the people who've been listening. Well, Nordsee has been on the go for 4 years. There's been many, many people work with the international service since then. And we've got Andy Archer coming up in a few seconds' time, and he's going to tell you exactly how many people were on the ship.
On AM, FM, and shortwave, this is Music for Young Europe on Radio Nordsee International.
I wonder how many of you know the number of people involved on this side of the operation over the 4 years. In German, you would say 51.
In Dutch, you'd say 51, and in English, you'd say 51. So let's see how many of the names you can remember as we start right back in the beginning in 1970 with the 3 German language disc jockeys, namely Horst Reiner, Hannibal, and Axel. And then there was Vic Pelle, Eva Feister, Kurt Bauer, and Bruno Brandenburger. The first English disc jockeys to work on the station were Johnny Scott and Roger Day. And they were followed by Carl Mitchell, Mark Wesley, Spangles Muldoon, David Gregory, Stephen Ladd, David Rogers, Andy Archer, Alan West, Duncan Johnson, Michael Lindsay, John Denny, Rob Eden, Mike and Sheila Ross, Larry Tremaine, and then the friend of all the disc jockeys everywhere in the world, A.J. Behrens, Tony Allen, Martin Kane, Stevie Merrick, Ray Cooper, Ed Marino, Crispian St. John, Roger Kirk, Mark Stewart, Paul May, Brian McKenzie, Terry Davis, Arnold Lane, Don Allen, Steve Berry, Ian Anderson, Mark Slate, Steve King, Graham Gill, Terry Campbell, Robin Banks, Roger Kent, Jason Wolfe, Bob Noakes, Peter and Werner Hartwig, and Pierre Dessain. And that totals to 51, all the people involved on the international side of Radio North Sea over the last 4 years. May I say thank you to Mr. Bollier and Mr. Meister for bringing me back into radio 4 years ago, and I always look back on my experiences on North Sea with a lot of pleasure. So thank you very much indeed, and best wishes to you and to all the disc jockeys on Radio North Sea International.
Radio North Sea International.
As the seconds tick away, 5 minutes left of the international service, and then it's, as Don said once again, memories, and we hope that from our part, that as you, the listener, will look upon the memories as being happy ones, and that we've brought a little bit of happiness into your life and maybe cheered you up when you've been down and played music that you found pleasing to the ear. If we've succeeded in that, then I think we can all say to ourselves, well, it was all worth it. It was worth sitting on a ship, and everything we believed in is worth doing. I think you would agree on that, Don.
Wholeheartedly. Just one person we haven't said hi to. I don't know whether or not she'll be able to pick us up this evening. From what I understand, she lives in Italy now. Perhaps she's back in Switzerland for the time being. And I must admit, jokingly, I've had my trials and tribulations with her. She, a very temperamental gal, Eva Pfister, if you're listening. Well, I don't think her name is Pfister now, is it?
No, she's married.
Yeah, she's married now. Anyway, Eva, if you're listening again, a very good evening to you. And we hope that you're enjoying the final hour here on Radio Nordsee International. I hope that sometime in the near future, perhaps myself or Brian will come across you again, and it'll be nice to talk about old times.
Definitely will be, because there's so many people who've been connected with the station. Vic Pelle, who was looking after us for some time, and then Eva from Zurich, and of course the 2 men themselves from Zurich, Mr. Meister and Mr. Bollier. And for them it's also, I know, very, very sad. So we're going to leave you with a piece of music, really, which to us is, well, very, very dear to us, and it's dear to Radio North Sea International, to most of you who've been listening. So, really, we're going to just say Auf Wiedersehen and bye-bye from every one of us on the international service. This is Peter and Peace.
We played this record because it was significant to the advertising, if you want to call it that we used to do on the World Service about this world situation, starving children and that. And we used to appeal over the air to give generously to, I can't think of the organization right offhand, but they look after starving, hungry children of the world. And we used to advertise this on the World Service because the shortwave service used to be heard all over the place, all over the world, in America and all over Europe and places like that. And I'm sure that in some small way we contributed to the welfare of these deprived children. So therefore the record Peace was a very significant one, because when you listen to the words of it, it means exactly what it says. Whoever wrote it certainly put a lot of feeling into it, and this was a record that was recommended by Zurich to be played in conjunction with these commercials that we made for the this campaign that we had on the ship for these deprived children of the world, the starving and the hungry.
Peace is a flower that grows
grows in the sunshine. Its petals are raised to the sky. Peace is harmony, love and understanding. Oh, why can't we have peace? Can't we have peace all the time? Peace is a bird that hangs on the breeze, watching the world hurry by. Peace is purity, faith and inspiration. Oh, why can't we have peace? Can't we have peace all the time? There's something there's not too plenty of in time. It's governed by the Almighty up above. Peace is a flower that grows in the sunshine. Its petals are raised to the sky, to the sky. Oh Lord, to the sky. Oh yeah, to the sky.
It's always sad when you see something like this come to an end, you know, when organized society, if we want to use that expression, puts the clamps on something that doesn't fall under its umbrella, yet does no harm. I can't see R.N.I doing any harm. I couldn't see Caroline doing any harm. I couldn't see any of the stations doing any harm.
Timing's time in Central Europe is now exactly midnight, and the international service of Radio North Sea is now closing down.
Dit is Radio Nordsee.
Auf Kurzwelle, Mittelwelle und UKW.
International.
Fun loving R.N.I. loves you.
And it was a funny feeling. We closed down and the Dutch programs came back on again. And we thought that was us, finished. And the next day, I mean, the ship was absolutely packed with people, literally. There was bodies sleeping in workshops, in corridors, and God knows what else. Yeah, they were going to continue until midnight, and then they decided, no, it was too late. They'd lose a lot of the audience. So they made it 8 o'clock. So we came in on the Ferry Mart program. Demal, again, was on the ship, and he said, well, now the English guys can say goodbye to their Dutch listeners. So we went into the studio and said a few words over there to the Dutch listening audience, and then we thought, well, that's it for us. Then Bolly arrived on the ship, along with his wife, kids, Meister, and his girlfriend. And I mean, both studios were just packed. You have no idea how many people were out on that boat. You just couldn't move. And he was talking in German to them all, and I can understand a little bit of German, and I could gather he was having an argument with him. And he had his speech prepared as to what he was going to say. And he was saying something I was picking up about in English. Them all saying, no English, it's finished. Bolly saying, yes, it isn't English. As it transpired, he turned round and said, there's a copy of the speech in English. So after I do my farewell speech, you come on immediately after me and read it in English. And I near died because this was about half an hour before his speech. And this, to me, was this ream of paper. And I thought, my God, I'm going to make a terrible mess of this because I've no time really to read it over and prepare it and get the inflections right. So I was really heart-pounding anyway. Arrived, Bolly went into the studio, very marvelous panel operating.
Luisteraars, we zijn nu te ontvangen op 3 verschillende golflengten. We zenden uit op 220 meter middengolf. Welkom ook de 49 meter Europaband, luisteraars op de korte golf en verder via FM kanaal 44. Tot u spreekt een van de eigenaren van de boot, Edwin Bollier.
Liebe Freunde von Radio Nordsee International, als wir unser Schiff, die Mebo 2, vor nunmehr über 4...
Very watery-eyed at that point, and then Ferry came on, said something, and Bolly got up from the chair he was sitting on, shook my hand, and said, with the hand, just give a gesture, and the chair's yours, more.
The words of Mr. Edwin Bollier will now be translated in English by Brian Mackenzie.
Thank you, Ferry. Dear friends of R.N.I, when we anchored our ship, the Mebo 2, off the Dutch coast over 4.5 years ago, we did not know what to expect there. We were, of course, familiar with Holland, and also we had business friends there in the past. However, what has developed here during the last few years, especially during the period of our partnership with Bazard, has really been more than just a normal business contact. We have found so many real friends in Holland that we are deeply impressed. When we came here, we were strangers. Now we are leaving as friends. This is perhaps the most fitting way of saying it. However, our friends in Bussum are not the only ones we would like to express our gratitude to. We are also well aware of the fact that we owe a lot of our immense success to you, our listeners. A commercial radio station without its listeners is simply unthinkable. We would not be able to exist. We would therefore like to thank you as well for remaining loyal to us in good as well as bad times, for helping R.N.I to become what it was supposed to be, a radio station for young Europeans. Your loyalty has shown that our concept has been right. Let me also thank everyone else involved in the R.N.I venture. Dear listeners, you all really helped to make this experiment a great success, and we are really proud of your efforts. And our sincere thanks also go to R.N.I's innumerable advertising clients. We hope that we were able to sell your products and services we advertise for you even better than before. Finally, we would also like to express our special thanks to the press for such a positive attitude and for objective reports, all of which helped to improve the extent of which our problems were understood. Finally, dear listeners of Radio Nordsee International, the time has come for us to say goodbye. We would love to have stayed, but as you know, the Dutch government has banned the broadcasting of radio programs from ships lying outside Dutch waters as from September the 1st, 1974. And we certainly do not want to do anything which is illegal. The only alternative we have, therefore, is to obey the law and stop broadcasting. Once again, we would like to express our sincere thanks to all of you and wish you all the very best in the future. And who knows, perhaps you'll hear us again sometime in the future. Goodbye, Dag vrienden. God bless you all.
There was about 15 minutes left to go at that point. And I'm not sure if it was then that Bolly just broke down and started crying in the studio in front of everyone, which he didn't try and stop it in any way. And it wasn't put on, it was just something he felt, which was very moving. And I think it shows something of who he was as a person. He just let it go. It was his baby and it came to an end, the whole bit. And everyone was very touched about it, really, the whole thing. Well, Dutch, English, disc jockeys and management and crew and everyone else.
When it was finished, we all stood there in the two studios, the two adjoining studios, the large one, such as it was, and the small one, with all the doors open. We all stood around there saying nothing, just looking at each other for fully 3 minutes, and nobody said a word, and hardly anybody moved. We just sort of stood around there aghast. It had happened, and we just didn't believe that it had happened. Everything was still running, the generators were still running, transmitters were still on the air, but not a sound, just weren't doing anything. It was incredible. Then old Roger Kent came round and said, "Oh, well, wasn't Holland's year, was it?" And they lost the World Cup. That sort of broke the ice. Anyway, the next morning, Mebo 1 came out, and it was a slightly overcast morning, and it had the air, I can't describe it, but it had the air of a day that you know is going to start calm and get very rough. It was that sort of a day. Mebo 1 came alongside, and all the jocks got off, with the exception of you, Rob, and myself, and also Don Allen, who was in bed and couldn't get up. Poor old Don. And Mebo 1 went off to glory in the harbour, thousands of crowds sort of piping them in. Apparently all the little fishing boats had their flags at half-mast, and there were thousands and thousands of people there waiting to meet them.
But of course we got stranded there for longer, as did Meister, who came on to supervise engineering himself. The weather blew up very bad after about 3 days, and we ended up staying for about a week, which set us back quite considerably, which could have some effect on the fact that we got impounded as well, because we were well behind schedule.
We were able, though, while we were at sea, to get the transmitters in a different shape. Meister personally got the 100K on a new frequency of, it was on 12, was it 1367 it was originally, wasn't it? We were on 220. Meister tuned it to 1232.
Yeah, 244, yeah.
244 meters, got it working very well on that. Into a dummy load, of course. You and I spent most of the time trying to get the BTA 10 together.
Which is already kaput.
Oh, it had been on fire or something, hadn't it?
We had lots of jobs to do anyway, cleaning the transmitters and rerouting wiring. And of course, after we'd gone off the air, we discovered a lot of things which would have given us problems anyway. Most of the time we were on the air pretty well 21 hours a day, weren't we? 24 hours a day. Most of the time, 2 days a week, 21 hours, which didn't give us a great deal of time to do engineering. So as a result, we had a lot of things to tidy up, which needed doing for about 2 or 3 years, I imagine.
Yeah. Eventually, the weather broke. That week was very bad. It was never, I think, less than about a force 7. And it was a full week, maybe 8 days, I can't remember, until the weather was calm enough for us to get in. I remember I gone to bed, and the tug came along while I was in bed. Really gave the Mebo 2 a hell of a bashing, because it came along at the very front of the ship, of course, by the prow, the worst possible point to tender. to cut the anchor. Bobby Schmidt came in and said, "Oh, Bob, come on, Nordsee goes to Veronica." I said, "Oh, that's amazing." So I got up. We did go right past Veronica within 100 metres or so. And they had a tender alongside and everybody on board was waving at us. Now, I think it was a very nice touch because we didn't have to go past Veronica. It was actually a detour on the way to Rotterdam, but we went past Veronica slowly. We towed past them, we waved, and it was, I think, a very nice gesture to do that. They were, after all, the first there. I thought it was very appropriate they should also be the last there. About 2 hours later, we started going into the Hook Canal, the canal that goes into Rotterdam. And we were, I think, 3 hours in that canal, weren't we, Robin? 3 hours going down this canal, which is enormous. Well, there were no bridges at this point, but there were ferries going backwards and forwards with funny people in cars, just like the Woolwich ferry, only yellow, and people waving at you as it went past, and everybody on the shore, binoculars and things, and looking at this amazing brightly coloured ship with a monstrous mast coming in. And we got to within about a kilometre of Rotterdam Central Station, a place called the Boompjeskade. It was at Rotterdam Block, and we stopped there for the night. You know, when customs came on board, they cleared us. Quite friendly, actually. They had a couple of cans of beer, and we were all very optimistic at this point. We thought, great, you know, everything's fine, everything's signed and sealed, won't have any hassles here. And they sealed up the records and cassettes and things which we expected, sealed those up. It's a normal procedure when you come in with a ship. They seal up certain things, and when you've gone out to sea again, you can break the seals. I don't understand the law, but that's apparently quite a normal thing. When we were in the harbour the following morning, I think it was Lonas went up and undid the capacity hat of the aerial and lowered it down into the lattice section, and then we were slowly towed around. By this time, of course, it was a bright sunny day. Everybody had noticed the ship was there, and there were a few police standing around keeping them back. Not that it was, you know, rabble. A few people came on board and had a look around, but we were a bit wary at that point of what sort of liberties we let people take. And we were turned round in full circle in the river, and we went back to a fork in the river, turned a hairpin round that fork, people all the way along cheering us, taking photographs, and went under a lift bridge, which is one of those bridges that lifts up with the actual span still horizontal all the way. And it had to be lifted to about 3 feet or 4 feet more than its normal level. I was told that I had to break the insurance seals on the lifting mechanism and get this bridge, this extra height, so that our mast would just about clear under it. And we stood on the front there, do you remember? We stood in the cage around what had been the high tension insulator.
Yes. We didn't believe that we'd get underneath because
No,
it's very deceptive when you're coming up against the bridge.
Oh, it was a frightening
It just cleared
sight.
it by about 5 inches, I believe.
Oh, an incredible sight. And of course, the people, this is right in the centre of Rotterdam, and there were buses, and people in the buses totally spaced out, and there's this massive gaily coloured ship floating through. And we went through canals, and about 2 hours after that we were in Slikkerveer. Everything was stripped out. The entire contents of the vessel were completely stripped out, and bit by bit repaired if necessary, maintained, cleaned, and put back. And at the time of recording,
There
the
was
ship
masses of work done in a short space
it's
of time.
incredible. We cleaned out the transmitters. That was our biggest job. I mean, it doesn't sound much cleaning a transmitter, but it took that in itself took a couple of
Laden
weeks,
in
didn't
luck,
it?
wasn't it?
You put in the new studios.
Basically, we rebuilt all the studios and rerouted wiring that needed rerouting and replaced components that need replacing.
Did 1,001 jobs that had been botched up at sea because there wasn't time to properly attend to them. You know, we made everything good. In the cable corridor, there were dozens of cables that went nowhere and were broken, and nobody knew anything about them. Bit by bit, we got them all sorted out until the ship was...
The end product gave us a unit that was totally working and completely non-suspect. There's no chance of anything failing, in other words. It's working perfectly.
And so concludes the story of R.N.I. Perhaps a pirate radio enthusiast's dream. The story of an idea which became a reality, and with it brought thrills, fun and excitement, and most of all entertainment into the homes of millions of listeners, not only in England and Holland, but most of the world.
I have very fond memories, yes. It was the best time of my life, in many ways. I hope I've got better times to come. I'm still quite young, but I did enjoy those days. Great fun. Although really the station, if you think about it, was a bloody shambles. It was so amateur, not true.
The days at Nordsee were very, very good for me, mainly because it taught me a lot more about life, which I think if I hadn't gone to the station, it would have taken me a longer time to pick up that sort of knowledge. It's made me aware of travelling and meeting people from different countries. It's made me aware of the power of radio as well. You know, I didn't realise the power of any media, but certainly the time out on the ship made you realise when you were receiving, you know, there's numbers of letters from people, and some of the letters quite pathetic in their own way, yet others that were so boisterous. There's so many letters egging us on to keep on going, you know. And that's the reason the station was so good, is because the listeners were devoted, I think, and it just shows you what human character's about when they can sit and listen to what is classed as illegal broadcasting from a ship, and you know they've got so much else to listen to, yet they choose the ship. You know,
I do look back on Nordsee. I think it's something that I wouldn't have passed up for anything, because it's a part of history, and in a funny sort of way it's nice to be involved in a part of a history of some kind, which the pirate stations were the first ones, around about the 64, 67 era, and then like the second lot with Nordsee, Caroline at that time, and Veronica all together, which was like another little era. And sure, to me it was something if I had someone ask me, would I do it again? Yes, definitely.
Radio Nordsee International.